Welcome to Video Games Revisited. Today we're going to be playing Global Gladiators on the Game Gear. This game is an 8-bit port of the Mega Drive or Genesis platformer. Developed by Virgin Interactive, it carries a lot of McDonald's branding and references, and is quite heavily charged with an environmental message. McDonald's obviously being the most environmentally conscious of all fast food chains. Now this game looks and sounds okay, but I must say it's a little bit dull looking in some places and the colours could do with being a little bit more vibrant. However, this might be done on purpose just to give a slightly dirtier, unappealing look at the environments in the game that it's obviously trying to spin to you as needing saving. The actual platforming elements aren't particularly well put together, mainly because the jumping's fairly awkward and is just a little bit too generous for the environment, so you'll constantly find yourself overshooting, and if you try readjusting it just doesn't feel right. It's hard to hit smaller targets, and on the more treacherous sections of the game with very small ledges you'll find yourself dying quite a lot. The aim of the game is to fight your way through 4 worlds: the Slime World, Rainforest, Toxie Town, and the Arctic Pole. Each of these worlds has its own set of characteristics and looks, and all of which tend to come back to some environmental finger waving. It's all a little bit too blatant for my liking. The Slime World's just covered in toxic mess. The forest level just strewn with cut down trees and angry animals. Toxie Town's just filled with references to automobiles and oil and sewers. And the Arctic Pole is set on a melting ice cap with, again, more angry animals going around thrashing out at you. I'm not sure whether this was an attempt by McDonald's to show that they were environmentally conscious, or whether this was just a little bit of a cash-in on programs like Captain Planet and their associated video games that were very popular at the time. Having grown up roughly around this era, I can't really remember any of my friends or being too impressed with the whole environmental thing myself, so maybe it was just something thrown in by companies at the time to get parents to spend their hard-earned money on products for their kids with a positive message. But my cynical over-analysis to one side, let's get back to the game. So each of these worlds consists of 3 different stages, and to pass each of these stages you need to collect a certain amount of McDonald's arches to simply pass the level, but if you could be bothered to hit a slightly higher figure, you'd be treated to a bonus stage where you can take part in quite a fun recycling minigame. In this minigame you have to collect the rubbish as it hits the floor and then throw it into the corresponding bin. If however you let the rubbish settle, then the game's over and your points are totaled up. To hamper your progress of getting to the end of the main levels, there are of course a whole range of enemies themed to the level you're in, and they'll do anything they can to stop you from progressing. Thankfully you're armed with a water pistol filled with some kind of orange goop, which is very handy at getting rid of them. I'm not entirely sure how killing polar bears and woodland animals fits in with the environmental ethos, but who am I to judge? In my opinion, the amount of enemies in this game is truly overwhelming and is the biggest problem with the game, as you run into them far too often, sometimes without warning when you drop off a ledge, or you end up running into them as you move to the edge of the screen. As a result, if you want to get through this game, you'll have to kind of inch your way along, just picking off enemies as you get to them, and this ends in a really disjointed platforming experience and really affects the flow of the game. You can actually dash if you hold down a direction, which is amusing as I never really found a use for this, and it's fairly suicidal to try running in this game, as you just hit an enemy and lose some health. The only real use being if you need to backtrack to pick up some more golden arches and have already cleared out the enemies, which you will find yourself doing if you're determined to get the bonus stage at the end of each level, or on some levels just to get through it, as the layout and level design is rather confusing, with many different levels and different paths you can take, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, as the game obviously has a kind of treasure hunting element to it, and it actually works quite well. Okay, so that's Global Gladiators. Overall, it's quite a challenging platform game with some fairly questionable intentions, and it's really difficult to recommend this over the 16-bit version, as it's quite clearly inferior. So if you do want to play it, that's definitely the version to play. But it is a port to a console with half the power, so it can be forgiven. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.